The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Monday, March 16th, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. There's a lot happening. The debate last night went off, and it was actually a really great debate, in my opinion. I like debates without audience participation, especially audiences that you could buy out, like Michael Bloomberg demonstrated. But I digress. A lot happening, and a lot that is signaling to me that we as a nation are in trouble. And I'm laughing for not crying. We are at the height of absurdity in terms of the response, the lack of response from the government, or rather the response from the government being centered on economic recession versus saving human lives indicates to me that we as a nation are in serious trouble. The fact that we have religious institutions that are still holding services, and some who are calling you unfaithful if you are afraid to come to church. In South Korea, patient 31, they had the pandemic under control in South Korea until patient 31 left quarantine and went to church. And as a result, over 1,000 people were infected from him directly. That tells me that we're in trouble. We have politicized this virus. And we have Republicans, not all Republicans. I'm actually pleased to see that Ted Cruz, who is one of the chief science deniers when it comes to climate change, he has come on board in terms of what we need to do in terms of the coronavirus. Newt Gingrich, who is the creator, the father of this scorched earth, know nothing, intransigent Republican movement that has been happening since he was Speaker of the House since 94, he became Speaker of the House in 94 as a result of a reaction to Bill Clinton's election in 92. Newt Gingrich, who is the father of all of this madness that we see in the Republican Party, he's come across the aisle and come on board with the fact that we actually need to do whatever it is that we need to do to stop this pandemic from killing millions of people. But then there's still many Republicans who are politicizing this as something that is geared up to attack Donald Trump. I think you're getting to the point where you're separating the people who are willing to die for Donald Trump from the people who aren't willing to die for Donald Trump. A lot of evangelicals are in this space, which is so all in all, it just looks like it's a really bad omen for the United States of America, because we have a president who's incapable of being concerned about the millions of lives that he's going to potentially lose underneath his watch. I don't think that phases him whatsoever. I think he's more concerned about the economy, the numbers on the economy. And then we have so many people who are and then we have young people who are out this weekend because it's St. Patrick's Day weekend, and they're partying like nothing ever happened, like nothing's going on. We have the debate last night, which was, again, I'll go over the debate in some detail in one of these segments. It was a good debate, but it centered and featured so many lies, and now people are gearing up to go to the polls tomorrow. About 5 states are voting, and I'm not sure that that's actually the best move to make during the onset of a pandemic. Like, we're at the beginning stages. If these, I will put it like this: by next week, we're going to all know how foolhardy it was for everyone to go out and vote tomorrow. People don't want to have the foresight to see it right now because it fits their political narrative. Right now, a depressed turnout probably is going to benefit Joe Biden. And so they want to insist on going on and going ahead and vote so that they can wrap up this nomination and not have to deal with the unwashed masses of the progressive movement. Right. That's the center. I mean, you even have the clip of Simone Sanders, whatever. I don't know what position she has with the Biden campaign. Sometimes she looks like the nurse. Sometimes she's a senior advisor. And yesterday she was a chief propagandist saying that the CDC said it was OK to go out and vote tomorrow. So let's explore that. Let's start there. Let's start with the CDC. Did the CDC say that it was OK to go out and vote tomorrow? Here's a clip of Simone Sanders on Chris Cuomo's show on CNN last night. Take a listen.
Our democracy is extremely important. And even in times of strife in this country, we have to do our duty. So the CDC and folks have said it's safe out there for Tuesday. So I don't know what Senator Sanders was talking about, but I'll tell you, Governor DeWine said it was safe in Ohio. So I encourage people to get out there and vote on Tuesday.
I'm sorry, but to me, this is so the governor of Ohio just made an announcement that all bars and restaurants are to be closed today going forward until further notice. So, but she said the CDC, she blamed this on the CDC. So I asked, I asked around, like, has anyone seen this link from the CDC? And this is the best that somebody could send me. Here's a notification, election polling locations, community guidelines, recommendations. Here are their recommendations. All right. Here are their 4 recommendations, actions for elections officials in advance of Election Day. Number 1, encourage voters to use voting methods that minimize direct contact with other people and reduce crowd size at polling locations. Already, you're out the gate wrong. The very first thing that they say in bold, bullet point number 1, encourage voters to use voting methods that minimize direct contact with other people and reduce crowd size at polling locations. Now, underneath the chyron, the lower third, the information for those of you who don't know what a chyron or a lower third is, that's the information at the bottom of the screen, the text telling you who the speaker is and telling what the headline is. And in the headline, it says that the CDC warns against groups gathering of 50 people or more. I've never been to a polling station where there's less than 50 people. OK, and then I've never been to a polling station like this voting is an old person's game right now. Until we change that paradigm, it's going to be full of old people tomorrow. Full of old people who feel like it is their patriotic duty to go out there and vote. And whoever they vote for, most likely they are going to vote for Joe Biden. So I get why they would want to go ahead and have the election tomorrow. But you guys are going to get some people killed. There's no way around this. Okay, so let me keep reading from the CDC. They said, encourage mail-in methods of voting if allowed in the jurisdiction. Well, okay, good. Encourage early voting where voter crowds may be smaller throughout the day. Minimizes. Okay, good. Encourage drive-up voting for eligible voters if allowed in the jurisdiction. Okay, good. Encourage voters planning to vote in person on election day to arrive at off-peak hours. For example, if voter crowds are lighter mid-morning, advise that in advance to the community. That's the catch, people. If you advise everyone to go in off-peak hours, particularly old people who are not going to be constrained by the regular workday, if you're encouraging all of them to go in off-peak hours, then you no longer have off-peak hours. Everyone's going to try to come at an off time, and then boom, you're going to have a crowd of 25 to 50 people easily. I just think it's grossly irresponsible. I mean, it's almost malicious to suggest that the CDC is saying that everything's okay to go vote tomorrow when they're giving you everything. The last thing that they're saying to do is to show up in person. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care who this benefits and who this hurts. I'm going to be honest with you for a little bit here. I don't give a damn about the election. I know you do, and I know we'll talk about it. I mean, I care about it, but in the sense of like human life, I don't care. I wouldn't care if Bernie was a shoe-in tomorrow. I don't care if the roles were completely reversed and all the old people who were going to go to vote tomorrow were going to go vote for for Bernie Sanders. I would still be saying it is grossly irresponsible for this to take place tomorrow. I just don't know how you can honestly justify going ahead with the election. I mean, Georgia had enough sense to postpone their election. I think Louisiana also had enough sense to postpone their election. I think we're at a point of absurdity where like vote or die has a totally different meaning now. Remember the vote or die campaign? Now it's vote and die. I'm sorry. And I'm not, listen, it's going to be what it's going to be in terms of this primary, right? It's going to end up the way it's going to end up. But we are actually talking about people dying. Do I have to be dramatic? But we're literally talking about a contagion that is a pandemic, a virus that is so contagious and so easily spread that remains on surfaces for 3 hours. Like somebody's going to touch a screen and the poll workers aren't going to properly sanitize it, and it's going to spread. It's a guarantee. That's how contagious this disease is. So we are literally sending people to contract a virus that is tearing people's lives apart. I mean, another 380 some odd people were died last night in Italy. And we are on that same trajectory. And I don't know that our system can actually handle the number of deaths that are getting ready to occur. It certainly can't handle the number of hospitalizations that need to occur. I mean, there's so many aspects of this. Like, why hasn't the military been deployed in terms of erecting hospitals, like military field hospitals where they can? Somebody kept saying this yesterday, but hospitals can. I mean, the military can go out and deploy and create and build hospitals that have up to 500 beds in them. I mean, you're going to need some standard. It's just some basic response things that we should have been doing already. We have all of this knowledge. We've had all of this time. Hell, I was ahead of the curve by 2 weeks, right? So if I knew about this, I knew this was going down 2 weeks ago before everyone else. The government surely as hell should have known about it at least a month before that. And here we are with not only the worst response imaginable from our government, but now we're in the middle of an election and people are politicizing whether or not old people should go out to meeting places tomorrow where hundreds of people are going to be interacting, touching things, leaving things. I mean, are you going to sanitize every single thing? I don't give a shit about this campaign. I really honestly care about, number one, the people who are going to die, but then most of all, how many people are going to spread it. Like, you're not just talking about the people who are going to catch it tomorrow. You're talking about all the people that they are going to spread it to. We are really a screwed society. We are really dealing with some pathologies that I don't know that we can overcome, but we'll discuss it after the patron party.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
And here we go. I know it feels a little weird to have these patron parties, but we got to keep some sense of normalcy going, right? Very special welcome to Russell Morgan. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. Sky Canoe, thank you for becoming a patron. Pregan, thank you for becoming a patron. Christian Pina, thank you for becoming a patron. Paul Estabi, thank you for becoming a patron. Faye Atchison, thank you for becoming a patron. Justin Blair, thank you for becoming a patron. Gwen Roberts, thank you for becoming a patron. Steve Castaneda, thank you for becoming a patron. Christopher Purdon, thank you for becoming a patron. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and signing up for twice the content and none of the advertisements like you should be hearing somewhere about here. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Yeah. Welcome back. So, I am feeling a little leery about the prospects of humanity and the long-term survival of humanity because of our ability to look into the oncoming storm, look into the abyss of this pandemic and still show the highest level of ignorance, intransigence, and partisanship. Like, this tells me that we could possibly be invaded by aliens. And instead of us unifying as one human voice to fight back against it, like all the movies have told us we would do, that it's a good possibility that you're going to have the same stupid hyper-partisan divides, the same religious divides, the same cultural and age divides, where people will seize upon disaster, looming disaster for them. Like, we're not just talking about looming disaster for other people. Like, we've shown our ability as human beings to not give care. I'm trying, folks, to not give a damn about the disaster that someone else is going through. Hell, we're perfectly comfortable as a society inflicting pain and suffering on other people with no regard to the disaster and the calamity that we caused. I mean, we do it every single day with the bombs that we drop, the war in Yemen. There's no limit to how much we are able to just ignore the calamity that's caused by other people. I'm not talking about that standard level of ability to ignore calamity. I'm talking about the ability to ignore impending calamity in our own lives, for the purposes of hyperpartisanship, for the purposes of positioning and posturing and protecting your power. How's that for alliteration? I'm looking at just all the different responses from like Sheriff David Clark, that Republican sheriff. Well, he's a Democrat, but he let's just say he caucuses with the Republicans. He's out here telling people to go out in public and participate, because this is nothing more than like scare tactics from the Democrats. And I'm like, this is next level. This is next level, because you're not only putting other people at risk, but you're literally putting yourself at risk, because the more saturated we are with regards to this pandemic, the more likely it's going to creep up on your ass and you don't even know it. Right? And you don't even expect it. So here's David Clark. This is what he said. He said, go into the street, folks. Visit bars, restaurants, shopping malls, churches, and demand that your schools reopen now. If the government doesn't stop this foolishness, stay in the streets. End government control over our lives. If not now, when? This is an exploitation of a crisis. This is the advice that's coming. I mean, I think the tweet ended up being deleted because of how much misinformation was in that, like how dangerous it is, but it was still out there, and it's still being advocated not only on Twitter, but here's Devin Nunes, an elected official, one of the top Republicans in this country, discussing the same exact thing. Like it's almost like they went around with talking points in an email and said, how do we make sure as many people go out as possible? And that, I mean, the core underlying thing is that they care more about the economy than human lives. But listen to Devin Nunes yourself.
There's a lot of concerns with the economy here because people are scared to go out. But I will just say, one of the things you can do if you're healthy, you and your family, it's a great time to just go out, go to a local restaurant. Yeah. Likely you can get in easily. Let's not hurt the working people in this country that are relying on wages and tips to keep their small business going.
We're very sympathetic.
Don't run to the
Understood.
Yeah, just don't run to the grocery store and buy $4,000 of food.
Right, they're cleaning off the shelves.
Go to your local pub.
Go to your local pub. What the hell? I mean, is there any place that you could think of that's going to be? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for even discussing this with you. I'm sorry. You know why? Because I know you know. I know you understand. But the fact that there's going to be a portion of our population that is being fed this information who are going to cluelessly go to their pub because they heard an elected official. Now, you got a whole lot of young people who aren't waiting on elected officials to tell them one way or the other. Right. Wow, I hate to be so callous, but turns out it doesn't look like this is only hurting older people. Right. I think that one of the most dangerous things that has been spread around, and I think we were being hopeful. Honestly, I think those of us who were spreading it around were trying to be hopeful. I know with kids, I would like with children, everyone was saying, oh, it doesn't really hurt the children. Children are turning out fine. And that seems to be bearing out in the data. I think there's like 0.1% of young people, of children under 10 who actually died from this, which correlates to your flu. Right, 0.1%. But there are reports coming from all across the world where young people who are healthy are dying from this. So, there are a lot of young people who weren't waiting on elected officials one way or the other. They're just out there living their lives. And I'm sorry, this week is the week, right? I think we've hit a load level. We've hit enough infections where now we're going to start seeing a real stress on our system. We're going to start seeing a lot of people showing up in the emergency rooms because they've contracted it and they're having a hard time breathing, or they whatever the symptoms are. And then our system is going to slowly but surely, I don't know if it's going to crash under the pressure. I think we've had enough time to be prepared. Even if we only had 2 weeks, I think that's enough time to be prepared to have a mass production of ICU beds and ventilators, full on production. Like the military has to have. Listen, I know that a lot of our medical supplies are built and manufactured in China, right? But if our country is so dumb that it did not maintain some capacity to actually develop critical items like healthcare, for instance, like critical urgent care things like intensive care units, if we don't have that capacity, then we're in a whole lot more trouble than we think. There seems to be I don't know. There's so much going on with all these stories. But let me get back to the narrative that I was piecing together for you, is the fact that you have an entire population of people who are going to be infected by this disease because of partisanship, because of politics. And it's not just Republicans who are doing this. You have the Democratic Party who is doing this. I'm going to be quite honest with you. There's really no reason anyone should be going out tomorrow. And again, I have a lot of people who get mad at me when I say this. They're like, Ben, well, we've got to work. Everybody's not privileged enough to be. I get that. So I'm not talking to you, even though I am talking to you. Like, I really want to appeal to you enough for you to be strong enough to say, forget about these bills. I'm taking care of my life first. I'm taking care of my actual breathing life, not my livelihood, but my health and my existence first. I would like to plead with you based on that, but then some people just can't break away. And I get it. Some people have to go. And what I'm saying, anytime I say stay home, I'm saying to the people who are lucky enough to be able to stay home, if you stay home, not only do you keep from getting infected and you keep from infecting your family and you keep from infecting all the people who are in your vector, but you freed up beds. Those are beds in the ICU that you don't have to take because you stayed home. And now there's a freed up bed for someone who was not as lucky as you. And I hate that I have to go through all these contortions to make sure that I don't offend anybody, because ultimately I'm like, just, in a minute, I'm going to be like, F it, just do whatever the hell you want to do. Don't listen to me. You're going to listen to yourself, because people are so sensitive. Like this is not the time for people to fall into the same traps that we fall into on a regular basis. And I think that's the core message for today's podcast. On a regular basis, we fall into the traps of hyperpartisanship, both in terms of the two-party system, and also intra-party. Like inside the Democratic Party, we fall into hyperpartisanship, moderates versus progressives. If it's something that's going to help progressives, then moderates are going to be opposed to it. If it's something that helps moderates, then progressives are going to be opposed to it. And I'm saying that this is not the time for that. We also fall into the traps of being politically correct. Like, you have to make sure that you give the caveats for all the people. Like, there's some people who aren't going to be able to take their days off. And so you got to make sure that you give your caveat. I'm not talking to the people who can't take the time off. You got to go through all these in normal times, you have to go through all of the iterations, all of the necessary steps to make sure that you don't offend anybody. And what I'm screaming at the top of my lungs is, these are not normal times. If you're more interested in me being sensitive to the fact that you can't take the time off than the fact that you should just take the time off to save your life, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm willing to go the extra mile and say, for those of you who can't take the time off, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to those who can take the time off, because we need you to free up the bed for the person who can't, the hospital bed, the ICU unit for the person who cannot. But the point is if we continuously and absurdly fall into the same traps that get us during normal times, then we are not going to fare well during this pandemic. We do not have time for hyperpartisanship. We do not have. I'm going to get to the debate. If you're here to talk about the debate, we'll get to the debate. Joe Biden was lucid. There you go. Whatever they pumped him up with, he was lucid for the full 2 hours. I don't know how long it's going to last, but he was lucid. Bernie Sanders was great on his toes, but he wasn't hard enough. Okay, there you go. There's your analysis. I'll give you a whole lot more in the Patrons episode. But I have to talk about what's pressing. Like, this is the week. if the trajectory stays the same way that it is right now, and actually, here's the thing, we're actually going to be worse than Italy because we have morons running our country. We have people who think that it's more important for us to argue about, to quibble over whether or not the government should institute a mandatory quarantine. You know, because of liberty reasons. Liberty. Okay, I get it. In normal times, we should debate the power of the government to be able to institute something like martial law and take full control over our normal day-to-day activities. I'm opposed to that. It's anathema to me, right? But at the same time, so is death. Death is pretty repugnant. Death is really something that I'm not interested in encountering at the age of 39. And I'm just like, we have to, and even if we don't get the government to do it, do we have the wherewithal amongst ourselves as free people, free moral agents, free agency? You know, we have autonomy. We can make our own decisions. Can we do it ourselves? And based on this weekend and the number of church services that went on, a number of bar crawls that were happening, number of festivals, Disney World and Disneyland were jam-packed this weekend. And I'm like, you know what? We're screwed. We're screwed because we don't have the strength amongst us to do what is necessary without the government coming in and saying everything is shut down. So look at the tension there. We don't want the government to have the power to be able to shut everything down, but we don't have the will. We don't have the will to do it ourselves because we are so inundated with the same normal routine. And I think the biggest asset, the biggest skill set in times like these is the ability to shift from what's normal to a new normal as quickly as possible. Because what's normal is for us to be able to quibble over partisanship, political issues. What's normal is for us to be able to say, oh, this is politicized and they're just trying to attack Donald Trump. What's normal is for us to worry about the economy and not worry. I mean, that's the normal. I'm not saying any of this is right. I'm saying that's the American normal, to worry about the economy and not human lives. So if you're like people like me, who's like, the government really should have shut down a lot of this by now, right? But the reality is the government is more concerned with the economy than the human lives. They're really trying to figure out how many people can we spare? Can we call about, can we survive 500,000 people dying and maintain a healthy economy? Then they will. That's what they're demonstrating. They're pouring money into the stock market. They're pouring money into the markets. That's what half of these meetings are about. Half of these press conferences from the Trump administration is about what they're doing. The Fed now has dropped their interest rates to 0%. And now they're doing interest-free loans. It's not the first time that they've done this. They're pouring I think $1.5 trillion total. It's not the first time that they've done this. But the fact is that they're focused so much on saving the economy and saving it as it is, without any regard to the ways that they could save it if they just change their paradigm. See, we could save human lives as well as the economy if we just changed our paradigm, and I think that's what we can't do. All right, when I come back, I'm going to talk about that. Perfect timing. I didn't even see the music coming up. I'll be right back. Okay. So here's the thing, there is a way to save lives as well as the economy, and nobody is acting on it. A couple of people have recommended it. I recommended it, like Thursday morning. AOC and Bernie Sanders offered it Thursday afternoon. A couple of people are talking about it, but no one is implementing it yet. The way we save the economy and lives is by instituting a universal basic income and suspending and placing a moratorium on all evictions, all foreclosures, all repossessions, and any utility cutoffs. And with the universal basic income on top of all those moratoriums, you will have an increased amount of consumption happening right now in the middle of a pandemic. It would just be happening from home. And it does mean that there are going to be losers in this. You're not going to be able to save every single bar, every single restaurant. But you know what? If you're giving a universal basic income, then you can shore up some of them. Some of them will be saved. But you know who will be saved? Lives. The economy overall and lives. You'll just have a redistribution. It will go from service industry to online. But you will still have economic opportunity. You'll still have new jobs. People who are losing their jobs in the service industry will be able to get jobs online because you're going to have, that's all the consumption that we could basically do right now until the internet goes out. And I don't think the internet is going to go out. But you see what I'm saying? There is a way to save the economy. It's just a radical transformation of the economy that needs to take place because, well, we're facing, these times are not normal. I don't want to say unnormal. These times are not typical. These are atypical times. You're not going. It is a critical moment, not only in American history, in world history, in human history, where we are all of a sudden having to make drastic changes in order to survive. And those changes are striking at the heart of American capitalism. And all it's saying is either you adjust how you treat human beings or you die. Your economy dies. And people, what am I talking about? It's literally staring us in the face saying either you adjust how we behave as human beings or we die. Not only our economy, but a lot of people. I hate to, it feels like I'm one of those fire and brimstone preachers. Repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand. You know what I mean? But the truth is, either we turn from our wicked economic and interpersonal ways, like we treat each other like crap in this world. Either we turn away from that or 1 million to 5 million people in America alone can die. That's where we are. We're still at the same predictions at 40 to 70% of Americans being affected by this. That's about 160 million people. If you look at a kill rate of 1%, and I'm using the phrase kill rate because I think mortality rate really kind of goes over some people's head. We're talking about the number of people who are going to be killed by this. The kill rate is 1 to 3.4%. So you're talking about 1.6 million to 5.4 million people who could potentially die from this. And we're still quibbling and arguing over the same stuff that we would be arguing over if it was a normal Tuesday. But what we're dealing with is not normal. What we're dealing with is not a time for us to be politically correct and dot every I and cross every T and be like, oh, I'm so sorry if I stepped on your toes. I'm stepping on your toes because I'm trying to help save your life. If I offended you, it's because we're trying to save as many people as we can. And then not only that, but these people who are so hyper partisan that they're going to get people in their party killed. Like, you're going to get your comrades killed, Republicans. That's what I'm talking about. You're so committed to your partisanship that you are religious people so committed to church. You're going to try to prove that God can heal you. Instead, you should have proved that God gives people common sense to stay their asses home. These are not normal times. All right, I'm just putting this down as a reminder for me. When we go to the Patron show, I'm going to talk about more of the capitalism, the problem of capitalism and addressing this pandemic, particularly Virgin Airlines, Virgin Atlantic, as well as Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. They're asking their employees to donate sick time to each other or to just take unpaid sick leave. And we'll talk about that in the Patrons episode. Let's talk about the debate a little bit. Again, Joe Biden was pretty lucid last night, so I guess they proved that whatever they shoot him up with can last long enough for him to have a coherent 2 hours. The only thing that Joe Biden benefited from more than whatever shot they gave him before was the fact that Bernie Sanders was not particularly bold last night. Bernie Sanders is a cerebral thinker. I respect that and I love it. I love to see his brain just actually calculating. I love to see that every now and then he actually turned the question on its head and rejected the premise of the question, particularly the question from CNN when they tried to draw a false equivalence between how Bernie Sanders advocated for changes in Social Security with how Joe Biden advocated for changes in Social Security. CNN actually tried to draw an equivalence between how Bernie Sanders advocated for changes in Social Security and how Joe Biden advocated for changes in Social Security. Here's how it went. Joe Biden has a long history of advocating for cuts to Social Security. We have the tape. Bernie Sanders alluded to that last night. He said, "Oh, really, Joe?" He said, "Well, everyone go to the YouTube and look at Joe's words." And it's clear as day. PolitiFact came out and said that Joe Biden, his statement was false, right? That he claimed that he never advocated to cut Social Security. That's clearly patently a false statement. The New York Times called him on it as well. But CNN, being the disingenuous actors that they are, they didn't call Joe Biden on his bluff. They went one step further and they tried to create a false equivalence between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, because Bernie Sanders also advocated for changes to Social Security. The changes that he advocated for, however, were to increase Social Security. That's what he advocated for. So CNN tried to draw a false equivalence between increasing the benefits of Social Security with Joe Biden saying he wanted to cut Social Security. You couldn't get more disgusting and more disingenuous than that. CNN, they are bad faked actors, and it was patently transparent. But what I enjoyed seeing was Bernie Sanders destroy the premise of that question. So I enjoy seeing how his brain works and that he's thinking on the fly and he's actually in the moment and he's not just trying to appear cogent. You know what I mean? He just was thinking on the fly versus Joe Biden sitting there just lying his ass off the entire time. But here's the thing. Being truthful is not enough. Being right is not enough. In these fights, you've got to go for blood, because CNN was coming for blood. Joe Biden was coming for blood. Bernie Sanders wasn't. Bernie Sanders was being too kind. He was right. His arguments were right. His thinking capacities far outpaces and surpasses anyone else that was in that room last night. You could see him calculating at 78 years old. Arguing, pulling up data and facts. I'm like, it was a brilliant display of genius, but it wasn't the hard ball necessary to throw Joe Biden off of whatever shot they gave him, the shot of adrenaline that they gave him to activate his brain. And here's the thing. Let's say that all three of them survived this pandemic, because it is targeting older people very hard. When I say three, I'm talking about Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump. Here's the thing. Donald Trump is not going to go easy on Joe Biden at all. At all. So I don't care how many shots and injections that they give him, because come on, you can clearly see that Joe Biden was operating with something in his system last night, as compared to all the videos that we have of him just completely lost. So keep giving him his shots. He's going to need them. Definitely up against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is not going to have any mercy on this guy. So that would be my only real critique of Sanders last night. Was he was accurate. He was on his toes. He fought back some. I mean, he had a couple of good clapbacks in there, but he needed to rhetorically bury Joe Biden last night, and he didn't. And Joe Biden got a chance to stand there and look as though he was that he was not suffering from cognitive decline, when he clearly is. So, I mean, let's see how this plays out. Everybody is going to vote tomorrow when they shouldn't. Let's see how it goes. But I mean, honestly, we've got to fight on a level. We're not playing with good actors here. We're not. And this is what I kept seeing last night. I kept seeing that Bernie Sanders, shucks, there goes my music. Hate to do it to you. I will pick up this conversation immediately after the music for patrons and the Patron show. If you want access, go to patreon.com/the BPD show, and I'll see you there. If not, I'll see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.